So, if you haven't heard of beam paints, I think we need to talk about it because I am so blown away by this amazing palette. This was recently gifted to me from the owner of the company, and I couldn't be even more impressed with the way that they are trying to just manufacture not only a non toxic, professional grade, high light fast, and highly pigmented watercolor, but I feel like they've touched on everything that is really important to me when I'm looking for this kind of a watercolor investment. These are absolutely just so adorable. These things that they call paint stones are these tiny, tiny little pots of paint, and they are wrapped in non-plastic. So this whole company strives to not put things in plastic. And I think that is something that really drives it home for me. I love the fact that they're packaging these in these little wrappers that are hand printed and they are waxed with the local beeswax from where they are. Not only that, but these wood palettes are next level. They are so creative and such a great use of raw materials. I mean, instead of being a, heavily plastic company with the same old plastic palettes, which I cannot stand. I stay away from them like the plague now because I just really don't even feeling like the feeling of painting underneath a plastic palette. So I do use ceramic anytime I can, but now that I have this to keep my paints in, I don't even want to move this from my desk, and I want to find ways to just do more of this because I think it's absolutely beautiful. They said that they strive to be plastic free as a whole as a company. And the big thing is the hand cut, sanded, and reclaimed white cedar and birch. These palettes are sensational. They're not only great quality, but I couldn't believe the detail and how amazing they smell in my studio. I had no idea. Let's just put it that way. And when I received it, I was so very impressed. The colors that I received in this palette are Spectrum 11 watercolor palette, and they came in this lovely little wrapper. I think that I would probably just be able to use this, as a way to take these paints with me. And something that I noticed right off the bat is the paint stones are really like little stones. I mean, they actually not only are a great big bursting, pea of paint, but like on top of it, they reharden. So you could just wrap them up in this really lovely wax paper and, or I think it's like a fabric. I'm not really sure, maybe canvas. And it's hand printed by Beam. And you could just take these with you. I do notice that they dried right away after I sampled them for the first time. So it was really, really easy. And I could imagine painting with these anywhere. So let's get into a little bit of painting with these beautiful paints so that we can experience this together, because I want to support this Indigenous family business of not only a woman who's striving to do things right from the start, but she's also so kind and so sweet. And I really, really love her paints. I also heard somewhere along the grapevine that she was striving to create a non-toxic acrylic. It's really important because there's so many toxins in our environment today. Not only are we throwing away our paint water, but on top of it, we're breathing in the watercolors. And a lot of times, if you have children or dogs or pets that really do like to lick things, it's really easy to end up in trouble really fast with your professional paints. So isn't it nice to know that these are so highly pigmented and at the same time I'm able to paint with something that is not toxic? Not that I put these in my mouth, but it's nice to know I'm not breathing anything bad in. On top of it, they're just lovely. I mean, I can't even imagine painting with nicer paint. It's truly, truly just a pleasure to do it. Oh, yeah. That first moment that the paint goes down, isn't it just lovely? It is. And the color is just so beautiful. It's really nice. I can even imagine what the full range of colors would be like in this, because I can see right now these are so nice to paint with. I love the fact that you can go from a very, very deep shade to a beautiful light shade all within the color. I love how they re-wet, considering that they are so hard to begin with. It's pretty remarkable that they re-wet like they do. They mix so well on paper. And the colors that I got sent, these are beautiful. You know, I was having this conversation with someone just the other day about finding handmade paint that was non-toxic and that was safe and better for our environment. So I really love where she's going with this. And being that this is a family of artists, I think that they really understand what we go through as artists, not only in sourcing really great materials, but in also being able to count on the Lightfast properties. I think a big deal that happens today is that we think things are Lightfast and maybe they aren't. And then after you've painted something really nice or given it away, all of a sudden you find out that it really isn't. And you're disappointed because you've just given something to someone that might not last and might fade very, very quickly. So knowing that these are Lightfast, I think, is one of the big things that I love. I also noticed that you can achieve really nice depth of color through glazing. I'm also able to go into wet paint and combine colors right on paper. They move really nicely. Again, I'm really surprised because of the solid structure in the dried form. I kind of had thought that they were not going to re-wet that well, or that I was going to see maybe separation in the pigment, but it's absolutely not the case. These just couldn't be any brighter or any more beautiful. And I love the way the colors mix together. Again, this is the Spectrum 11 watercolor palette. The yellow is so brilliant. It's so nice to have a cadmium-free yellow too. When I really stop and think about some of the toxins that I expose myself to just by painting, and I paint so much, I'm really quite rough with my paints, and I think that I take a lot of chances. Oh, I love that. Look at that. Looking at the way they travel into the background is amazing. Just a little tiny touch, and look at how much travel. So beautiful. The yellow is a really warm yellow too. It reminds me of cadmium yellow a little bit, but it's more like sunshine rather than fluorescent. And to tell you the truth, I really don't like fluorescent yellows. Even in lemon shades, I like a little more warmth in my yellows because it just makes more sense, especially when I see them on camera and they're absolutely glowing. I feel like not only is that dangerous, but I feel like it's so unrealistic. And brights are nice, but they have a moment when they are necessary and moments when they're not. And I tend not to trust really bright colors. What I did notice is there are some colors in this range that would absolutely replace opera rose. That's been something that has been a topic of conversation around my students, definitely, because when students first start to paint with opera rose, they love it. And it, rightfully so. It's a great color and it's so much fun to paint with. The only problem is that it's not Lightfast. And so ultimately what happens is your painting goes away pretty quickly over time. But not even over time, I would say, pretty quickly. So it's kind of disheartening, and it gets a little bit upsetting seeing that happen. I would say this would be a really good replacement for Opera Rose. This one's called Cherry Magenta. I think it has some really nice bright qualities and some things that I would love to paint with on a regular basis because, again, it's really hard to find that kind of a paint color. So I'm just doing some mixing on paper here just to get used to the colors and experiment with the layers and see how bright some of these colors actually are. I'm loving this ultramarine. I think it's really beautiful, and it mixes with some of the magentas so well to come up with some nice deep shades of purple. When touching on the magenta, it kind of develops this beautiful light lavender shade, and it immediately combines, leaving a little bit of granulation behind. But such a warm and beautiful tone. This lovely spring green is much like May green, I think. From the minute I swatched it, I felt like it had properties that I hadn't seen really in anything else, and I almost felt like it was a true chartreuse. Like in mass tone, you were going to get some of the properties of May green, but so much more than that. I feel like it delivered some things in there, like these beautiful warm yellows along with it, as well as a cool feel because of the green. But yet this is definitely not a fluorescent. And in mass tone, you get a lot more green than you expect. Perfect for grass and for doing layers. And even combining with other things. You'd be surprised how well this actually combines with magenta and red and makes a really beautiful orange, which is really unique because when you're painting, typically if you add anything green and you mix it with the reds and the pinks, you're going to get shades of brown. This one pretty much just gives you a little bit more of an orange shade. In my case, I would call it non-muddy colors. I mean, it's really unusual to have a green that doesn't turn muddy once it starts combining with other colors. So I think it should be noted that this really doesn't do that. Even in its mass shade, if I'm doing something really outlandish with it, it still just turns orange instead of a muddy brown. And you can see as I layer, it's just grabbing more warm tones rather than muddy tones. Having that clear color on your palette really does save the day, especially for beginners, and it goes a long way. And not having paintings get ruined when you're trying to do lots and lots of layers like I am here. I'm going to go back and layer right here with a little bit of the unmarked color. I believe this one is Wild Cherry Red. We'll have to check. And then the other one is Cherry Magenta. Cherry Magenta to me feels like a very beautiful shade that could be mixed with so many colors. It gives you that rich, warm kind of jewel tone and very much looks like a cherry. Let's go back and do the cherry magenta because this is such an unusual color and one that I think could really become a pink that I would just have to have in my palette all the time. As I do the layers, I'm noticing, especially over the blue, it really does brighten it so much, giving you that beautiful bright pink that typically Opera Rose only carries when I paint it over a beautiful bright blue. That was interesting. Okay, so I really did kind of get a feel for how the colors mix together and what they're going to do in different circumstances. Now let's try something a little more, I don't know, like monochromatic or just maybe two colors together with some clean water. Every time I get new paints, it's so much fun to just spend some time with them and enjoy playing with them because this is how you get to know your paints. So this yellow is called Poplar Yellow, and it really does remind me of something so incredibly warm and friendly, almost like sunflowers. I love the fact that it doesn't have that fluorescent quality, yet it's so bright. It's a beautiful color that's really clean, and I think that you could mix it with reds so you get really bright oranges. You can use it in sunflowers, in your sunshine. I usually have to mix two colors together to get this kind of a shade, so it's really delightful to actually have it in a shade right off the bat that's so smooth and so soft at the same time. That's really beautiful. I'm going to go back to this lovely green shade because spring green is really interesting to me. It almost has this cool yellow bottom tone to it, and yet it has so much green. You can see the mass tone of it is definitely that green shade. But then as it starts to dilute, it's got this gorgeous light yellow quality to it that I just love. I think it's really pretty. It doesn't travel too quickly, which is really handy for a green because sometimes greens will mix in with other things, especially when you're painting florals. And having one that absolutely takes over a painting can be a little hard to deal with. And this one doesn't do that. What I noticed in some of the other samples that I'd painted, it even grabbed more of a bright orange at first rather than mud, which is really handy because you will hit other areas and it's really convenient not having something that will explode into a muddy mess. And in the solid tone here, all you have to do is just remove a little bit of the water and it starts to bring back those beautiful shades within the color. That's really pretty. Beautiful shade. Now I'm going to bring in a little bit of this cherry magenta because I really do love, I'm interested to see how it mixes with some of my flower petals. That's so pretty. As I peel back some of the wet, I can see it actually mixing in such a lovely way, forming almost like this beautiful warm orange, not too bright and easily lifted. Really beautiful. It definitely took over where the yellow was, which is pretty interesting to me. So I'm going to see how well it lifts so that I can get that nice little transparent line. Within the shade and still celebrate the yellow behind it. Great lifting ability of the yellow and the cherry magenta, even after they're mixed together. So you can see now I got this beautiful little outline with my yellow back. Add a little bit of the yellow back in, and we've got our sunshine. I'm going to see what happens over here. The paint does not dry really, really fast. But when it's just slightly wet, you can see it doesn't over travel when you mix them together. They just start to combine in a really nice, interesting pattern. I like that because sometimes when I pair these two colors together, they tend to fight back and forth a little bit. And this is something I often try to achieve, is that nice little line, but it's really hard to get. Really beautiful. Just enough and not too much. See, it's allowing some of the yellow to remain while it's bleeding through in a nice way that you can honestly control it depending on how much water you leave on the page. If you noticed here, I actually let the May green or the spring green combine with the yellow so that we could get a little bit of a style line on the outside of the painted flower. And here I'm just seeing if I can glaze over wet paint to achieve a different result. That's really pretty. Looks like it's working out really well. So you can see there's a lot of different things you can do. Just remove some color. Take a color you'd like to create a line with. And depending on how much you leave on the paper, it's either going to travel a great deal or you can actually control it a lot more than you think. So it's easy to paint layers with these, and I really love it. I still really love the different variations that you get from the spring green. I think that's really interesting to play with. It's so pretty. Okay, so there's another one. Let's go on to the blues and try this robin's egg blue. I think that's what it is. Robin's egg blue, PG7 and PW6. Re-wets nicely and it's really creamy. My brush just wants to drink it all in. It's so nice. This is really pretty color. I actually think this is going to make a great background. Because it's just light enough, you know? Let's see how it mixes with some of the other blues. What a beautiful blue that is. It's so precious and so lovely. I honestly just want to leave it alone. It's really pretty. Let's gradiate down a shade a little bit with one of the darker tones. So I'm going to work this ultramarine up towards the robin's egg, so we can watch it granulate. And then I'm going to start to mix it and see how it combines in a wash. The robin's egg almost feels like it's got like a pastel, like a little bit of white in there. So it should make some really beautiful shades of lavender. But there is a nice transparency still to the shade. It's not entirely opaque. It's got some really beautiful qualities. So we're just going to add the color to the top and let it start bleeding down. And then as I get in the center, I'm going to add a little more water for a very, very wet wash to try and encourage that shade of powder blue. And then a little more robin's egg in the bottom. What a beautiful color. The granulation in the ultramarine is stunning. I can't believe this is a non-toxic paint that's handmade and has so many beautiful qualities to it. The beautiful lavender shade too. It's not too opaque. It has some granulation, and I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. I definitely haven't seen anything like the robin's egg. That's beautiful. I'm going to let that dry, and then we'll come back to see what else we can do with it. Let's do one more. There's a strawberry red here that we can't neglect. We absolutely have to look at it. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite this bright. Even my pyro reds and my alizarin crimsons, scarlet reds, I don't really think they quite compare to this. So I'd be really interested to know exactly what pigment this is that she used and where she found it. Because if she's sourcing this from inside Canada, I mean, my goodness, PR 170 is the number in pigment code. It's just stunning. Look at that color. It's so incredibly bright, and You don't really have to do much to get it to where it is. I'm going to test out the lifting ability of it right now. Wow, it lifts so well. I can't believe this is so bright, and yet it lifts so lovely. That's insane. I think I could actually bring this all the way back if I wanted to. To have a red that is this bright have these lifting qualities, and it truly is like a strawberry. This paint is worth every cent. It really is valued. It's beautiful paint. It layers. It's just stunning. This is the prettiest cerulean blue. I don't know if it's called cerulean. This is called Almost Night PB15. PB15. Beautiful light shades. Highly pigmented though. I don't really expect it. So much brighter than I had thought. Still moves around and it almost looks like it's granulating. So in areas where it's bleeding, I'm just going to see if I can peel back with some clean water without having to dry it. Yeah, I can. Really lovely. Okay, so let's go and see what kind of shade we can mix on paper with our yellow. And this bright blue. Oh my gosh. That's stunning. Could you even ask for a nicer shade of green? So beautiful. Makes this lovely, lovely, like, I would say cobalt, like a cobalt dark. And I think it's granulating. I don't know. I'm going to leave this one here to see if it is. If it is, then that means that this one, Midnight PB 15.1, that could possibly be a granulating color. So mixed together with the Poplar Yellow, you get something equal to almost a cobalt. It's like maybe somewhere in between a hooker's green and a cobalt green. Not quite as blue as the cobalt green dark, but kind of close. I mean, if you add a little more of the blue to it, you could definitely get that. It's so pretty. Beautiful shades. So let's go back now that this is dry. I'm amazed at how quickly these paints dry. That makes it really workable. Let me see. So we need something that will go over this shade pretty evenly, and I think I'm going to choose that new shade that just came in. This one is called Mars Violet. It's a granulating shade. And I'm really interested to see what happens when I add this. I'm going to add a little bit of the cherry just to see if I can encourage more of those beautiful pink tones to come out. This is a highly granulating color, so what I should end up with is something that is kind of like a beautiful bright pink, but with heavy granulation. Since it's called Mars Violet, I figured it would be really fun to kind of give it a little more of that violet, that ability. Now if I peel back some of the color, I should be able to see some of the granulation happening. I mean, it doesn't show this color as beautiful as it is if it wasn't mixed with anything else. It's really, really a gorgeous color. But I wanted to see what it looked like when I start to combine it with the other ones. It's really pretty. And this one is called Mars Violet. I'm going to try another flower with a little bit more of the shade, kind of a little heavier. That's what I was looking for. That's just stunning. Just beautiful. I think this is my favorite one so far. Now I'm going to try and peel back a little bit of the center and see what I get. It's probably not the best brush to do it with, but I'm going to try anyway. Look at that. Perfect. More than I even expected. Now I added a little bit of the robin's egg just to see what it does. Really cool. Yeah, it likes to take over for sure. Look at that color. It's the prettiest color. Yep, by far, this is my favorite combination from this palette. So that's robin's egg, ultramarine, and Mars violet. So pretty. What a beautiful color. The ultramarine, I just want to remind you, is not marked because the label is slightly cut off. So it's PB29. So there's my little samples. And I think that we didn't even cross over all of the colors. Like this beautiful pumpkin didn't even get used yet. And the gold didn't even get a little highlight, nor did the lavender. So let's try and add in a little bit of the orange while we're here. I'm just going to have my orange dancing in the bottom here just a little bit. I love how even when the orange is close to the green, it does not make mud. It stays really clear. And the other colors that I didn't use yet are this lovely one that is a very pale shade, more like a skin tone, called Morning Peach. It re-wets really easily. And it has that creaminess, that creamy color to it. I'm just going to make it a blend on top of the orange here. So it kind of looks like some more little flower spots in the distance. It's a really beautiful shade. Make a great skin tone. And then lastly, we don't want to forget this gorgeous lavender shade. This one is called Lilac, Spring Flowers. Re-wets really easily. It's got a beautiful creaminess to it. I'm just going to put in some little representational flowers in the back. I'm trying my best to use all the colors. That is such a pretty shade. It's really beautiful. So we have this pumpkin shade, and then which is more like a spicy pumpkin, and then that beautiful soft peach and a gorgeous lavender. Warm yellows mixed with the green gives us these beautiful different shades of greens, and also mixed with that really beautiful color. What is it? Almost Night PB15. And the red just couldn't be any more brilliant. Here's our really pretty Robin's Egg Blue with the ultramarine at the top, the PB29, and this new shade that she just sent me, which is Mars Violet. I really like that. It's really pretty. And then here's some of our colors dried all together. As you can tell, there's no mud going on. I love the fact that even when mixed with the green, this is not grabbing anything but true colors and true shades. So you get even more warmth, even more depth of color when you glaze, and you really can't go wrong. You know, a lot of times you'll mix colors together, and if they're not true pigments, what happens is they grab some really bad colors that you never want to paint with, and they can really just destroy a painting so quickly and so easily. And what I love about these is that even when challenged, you can see, and that's a challenge right there, it still turned out relatively nice, you know, without losing the qualities that I think she originally wanted us to see in these paints. Well, I'm really impressed, and I love beam paints. I think that they're truly so beautiful, especially this gold that I wasn't expecting to fall in love with. It's somewhere in between, I don't know, like I have a gold that's opaque, and I have some that are very, very sheer. But this one seems to just dance around, and I would love to know what it's made of. It says it's a bronze gold, handmade, but the shade is something I've never really experienced or seen before. It re-wets so easily, and just it's magnetic on my brush. And then when I go to paint with it, it leaves such a gorgeous shimmer that is remarkably, it's like dancing. It's so pretty. Like it has a transparency, but yet it's got so much gold. It's just so easy to paint with. I would almost say like the only thing I've ever seen that's kind of similar to it and nothing like it at all is like an ink that has gold in it because it's very liquid, but then you have so much transparency that it just doesn't stick to the paper. This one really sticks, and it allows me to layer right over watercolor. I've really never had anything with this kind of quality, and usually if I add gold over watercolor, it just becomes more opaque gold. It doesn't have that transparency where I can see the color through it. So this is remarkable. My dear, this is such a win. Your gold bronze is something I have never experienced before, and it's such a highlight to this entire set. Thank you so much for sending me these paints. I am delighted, and I'm going to have a lot of fun with them. This is just the start. All right, guys, let me know what you think of the paints. Remember, this is a handmade watercolor, only available at beampaints.com. They are available in some small art stores, so you might want to check the list on their website for these wonderful little paint stones. And be sure to pick yourself up a palette because that is insane.